Have you ever noticed how certain people linger in our memory? Not because they said something profound, but because of how it felt to be around them. As if they touched something inside us that even we hadn't found the words for yet. It's strange how someone can leave the room, or even your life, and yet they don't really leave. A scent, a song, a moment of quiet, and there they are again. It's not about logic, it's never been. It's about something softer, deeper, more difficult to name. Some women have that effect. Not just on one man, but on many. And not because they were the most beautiful, or the most giving, or the most available. No, it's something else entirely. It's almost as if they awaken something in the man, not just attraction, but recognition. Like he sees a part of himself reflected in her that he didn't know he was looking for yet. And once it's seen, it's hard to forget. There's no manual for this, no strategy to memorize. And those who try to imitate it, who read articles and rehearse lines and calculate their presence like a performance, often find that the magic slips right through their fingers because this isn't about control. It's about depth, stillness, presence, the kind that doesn't announce itself but leaves fingerprints on your psyche. Carl Jung called this anima projection, but let's not get lost in the term. What it really means is that men, often unknowingly, carry inside them an ideal of the feminine, a quiet blueprint. And when a woman walks into their life who happens to match that internal shape, it's as if something ancient lights up. Not in the mind, in the soul. But the woman who fits that shape, she usually isn't trying to. She's not chasing. She's not molding herself into anything for someone else. In fact, it's often her refusal to do so that makes her unforgettable. She's just being, just living. And in doing so, she stirs something dormant, not because she needs him, but because she knows herself. And that's the paradox. The less a woman seeks to be wanted, the more magnetic she becomes. Not because she's distant or cold, but because she's full. She's not performing femininity to be chosen. She's embodying it because it's who she is. And when that embodiment is genuine, when it rises from within and not from a checklist, it resonates with something buried in a man's subconscious, something he didn't even know he missed until he met her. Have you ever watched a man fall quiet around a certain woman? Not the kind of silence that comes from awkwardness or boredom, but the kind that feels reverent, like he's suddenly in the presence of something that deserves to be approached slowly, carefully. It's like the air shifts. He laughs less, but listens more. He starts to notice her hands, the way she pauses before speaking, the way she looks at the world like she's seen things he hasn't yet dared to see. He may not be able to articulate it, but he feels it, and it pulls him in, gently, like gravity. This kind of connection can't be forced. It can't be fabricated. It arises from the quiet mystery of someone who is rooted in themselves. A woman like that doesn't need to impress. She doesn't need to decorate her truth. She just walks through the world with an intimacy toward herself. And it shows. Not loudly, not obviously, but unmistakably. And maybe that's the real reason men come back. Not because the woman pursued them, not because she bent to fit their needs, but because she showed them a glimpse of something they'd lost, a part of themselves they couldn't reach alone. Being with her felt like being closer to that missing piece. But this isn't just about him. It's about her, too. The woman who becomes unforgettable isn't doing it for someone else. She's doing her own inner work. She's not perfect, but she's present. She's not fearless, but she faces her fears instead of hiding them behind charm. She's not polished, but she's honest. There's a strength in that kind of softness, a quiet kind of strength that doesn't need validation to feel real. Sometimes after intimacy, whether emotional, physical, or both, there's a moment that defines everything that follows. A breath, a pause, a decision to cling or to release. And most people rush through it, desperate to label, to secure, to prove. But the women who linger, they know better. They don't try to capture the moment. They let it echo. They don't ask, "What are we now?" They ask, silently, "What did we just become?" Because they understand something rare, that true connection deepens in stillness. Not in declarations or demands, but in the willingness to let the silence speak. To let the other person return to themselves, and to return to your own life without needing to be followed. It's a kind of emotional detachment, but not the cold kind. It's more like emotional maturity. The understanding that intimacy doesn't always need to be sealed with promises, that sometimes what leaves the deepest mark is not what is said, but what is felt in the quiet. And that, maybe, is the secret. It's not about chasing him down or making him choose. It's about what your presence awakens in him when you're gone. What questions you leave him with, what memories your energy stirs long after your body isn't there. Because when a man is left alone with the echo of you, and that echo is filled not with need, but with depth, he starts to realize he hasn't just been with a woman, he's been with a mirror. One that showed him something about himself he wasn't ready to see before. And mirrors like that are rare. Most people, truthfully, are trying so hard to be loved that they forget to be themselves. They perform. They adapt. They seek applause. But the people who stay with us the longest, the ones whose absence hurts like an ache, are often the ones who didn't need anything from us, who simply showed up as they were and invited us to do the same. We may not have been ready to accept the invitation at the time, we may have walked away, but the soul remembers, and the body follows eventually. And so it's not a surprise when some men come back, not because the woman begged or played it cool or gave them an ultimatum, but because being near her felt like standing closer to truth. Even if he didn't know how to hold it back then, even if he fumbled it, even if he ran. Sometimes it takes distance to recognize depth. Sometimes it takes silence to hear what presence was trying to say all along. And when a woman leaves the emotional door slightly open, not wide, not inviting chaos, but just open enough for curiosity to walk through, he will feel it. Not because she's waiting, but because she's not. Because she's gone back to her life, her art, her rituals, her own becoming. And that kind of self-containment is not rejection, it's reverence. Reverence for herself. It's not easy to be that kind of woman, the one who doesn't chase, the one who doesn't need closure to validate what she felt, the one who doesn't rewrite the past just because someone else didn't understand it. But she exists. And when she does, she leaves a mark. Not just on him, but on the world. And maybe, if you've ever been her, you know exactly what I mean. Maybe you felt that quiet ache of someone returning, not because you called them, but because your silence spoke louder than any words ever could. That's the kind of presence this world forgets to value until it's gone.
There's something profound about the way people remember how you made them feel. Not what you said, not what you did, but how your presence settled in the room. That emotional fingerprint you leave behind. Some women carry it like a scent that lingers long after they've walked away. It's not about trying to be unforgettable. That's the trick. It's about being so fully rooted in who you are, so quietly attuned to your own rhythm that your energy itself speaks louder than your words ever could. And he feels it, even if he can't name it, especially if he can't name it. He might call it mystery, or say there was just something about her, but what he's really trying to describe is the experience of standing in front of someone who has depth and realizing how shallow most other encounters have felt in comparison. Depth isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't shout over silence, doesn't perform for validation. It just is. And when a woman lives from that space, a man might not always know how to meet her there, not at first, but she'll stay in his mind because she showed him a place within himself he didn't know existed, and he'll find himself circling back to her again and again, trying to find that place in others, only to come up empty. Because depth can't be copied. It's not a look or a phrase or a pose. It's lived, cultivated. It's earned through solitude and heartbreak and healing, through nights when you sat alone with your own thoughts and didn't try to escape them, through becoming a woman who doesn't fear her own company, who doesn't rush to fill silence with noise or loneliness with strangers. When Jung spoke of individuation, he was talking about this journey of becoming whole within yourself, not perfect, not invincible, but real, awake, alive to your own edges and shadows and soft spots. A woman who has walked that path doesn't need a man to complete her story. She doesn't even need him to understand it. But when he meets her, he feels the weight of it, the way she's not asking him to fill her, but to meet her. Not above her, not below her, but beside her. That's rare, and rare is hard to forget. We live in a world where everyone's trying to be chosen, but the women who stand out are the ones who have already chosen themselves. And that choice, silent, steady, unapologetic, makes her magnetic. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. She knows what she brings, she knows what she needs, and she knows that love built on neediness is just fear in disguise. There's a quiet paradox in this. The less you cling, the more they feel drawn in, not because you're playing games, but because your freedom invites theirs. When you don't try to hold on too tightly, you give them space to miss you, and in that space, their own feelings begin to breathe. Desire grows in that freedom. Respect deepens in that stillness, and so many people rush right past it. The morning after intimacy, the first text, the urge to define what it means. So often that rush comes from fear. The fear of being forgotten, of being unchosen, of having given too much without return. But what if you didn't rush? What if instead you let it settle? What if you trusted that presence speaks louder than pressure? Some of the most unforgettable women don't cling to closeness. They don't panic in the absence of response. They simply return to their life. They go back to their routines, their friendships, their inner rituals, not because they don't care, but because they know their life didn't begin with this man, and it won't end with him either. That's a kind of grace we don't talk about enough. The ability to let someone feel your warmth without demanding their return. To hold the memory without clutching the outcome. And here's what Jung understood that many miss. The psyche doesn't respond well to force. The unconscious mind thrives on symbols, dreams, images, not pressure. When a woman embodies stillness and authenticity, she becomes a symbol in a man's inner world, a metaphor, a mirror. Not because she intended to, but because her being touched something universal in him, something old, something he may not have known was even there. He may have walked away. He may have said he wasn't ready. But long after, when he's alone with his thoughts, when the noise of his distractions quiets, she returns. Not as a ghost, but as a presence, as a question he never fully answered, as a chapter he never fully closed. And it's not manipulation, it's not a tactic, it's the natural gravity of something real, something rare. You see, when a woman doesn't demand to be understood, she leaves space for curiosity. And when she doesn't rush to be remembered, she gives memory room to grow. Men don't come back because you chase them. They come back because being with you reminded them of who they wanted to be, or who they could be. Because somewhere in your presence, they felt more themselves. And that feeling of being seen, not judged, not fixed, just seen, it's addictive. especially in a world that often teaches men to hide, to pretend, to armor themselves with success and stoicism and surface-level charm. But then she came along, not trying to change him, not trying to claim him, just witnessing. And in that moment, a doorway opened inside him, a glimpse of what real connection feels like, of what safety feels like. And even if he couldn't walk through it then, the memory of that door haunts him, gently, persistently. There are women who haunt you with drama, but there are others who haunt you with peace, with stillness, with the echo of something that felt like home. That's the difference. The first will exhaust you. The second will pull you back. And the second kind of woman isn't rare because she's better than others. She's rare because she's done the work. She's stopped chasing validation. She's made friends with solitude. She's forgiven herself for needing too much, for giving too much, for loving without boundaries. She's grown roots in her own soul. And because of that, her presence feels different, more grounded, more honest, more free. You can feel it when she walks into a room. You can feel it when she walks away. Not because she's trying to prove anything, but because she carries her worth like skin, quiet, intimate, unshakable. And maybe you've been that woman, or maybe you're becoming her now. Either way, know this. The most powerful imprint you leave isn't in what you give, or what you say, or what you offer in desperation. It's in how you make people feel about themselves when they're with you, and how much they miss that feeling when you're gone. Jung once said, "What you resist persists, but what you embrace transforms." The woman who embraces herself fully, deeply, truthfully, creates relationships where no one feels trapped, only chosen. And chosen love, that's the kind people return to, because it doesn't bind, it frees. And freedom, real freedom, is the only thing we ever truly long for in love.
There's a quiet kind of magic in the way some women return to themselves after intimacy. Not bitter, not afraid, not grasping for certainty. Just returning, like the tide to the shore. Not because they were dismissed, but because they were already whole. It's in that graceful retreat, that soft recentering, where a deeper kind of attraction is born. One that doesn't pull with desperation, but with dignity. We're so used to measuring love by proximity, by the frequency of calls, the speed of replies, the labels we chase like trophies. But the truth is, what lingers in someone's heart isn't how often you reached for them. It's how deeply you reached within them. And the moments right after closeness, those quiet hours where nothing is said, where the world starts again, those are the moments where memory is shaped. It's not the words you leave behind, it's the energy. The way you smiled without trying to charm, the way your body was present, but your soul wasn't demanding anything in return. The way you touched them, not just with your hands, but with your awareness. These things imprint, not just on the skin, but in the psyche, in the places we carry long after time has passed. Some women understand this without ever needing it explained, not because they were taught, but because they learned through living, through heartbreaks that shattered illusions, through nights they didn't know if they'd be okay, and mornings where they woke up still loving themselves anyway. These women don't need closure. They are closure, because they know that nothing truly meant for them will be lost, and what leaves was never theirs to keep. There's no power more quietly disruptive than a woman who lets go without bitterness. She doesn't slam doors. She doesn't send last word texts. She just opens her palms and returns to her garden, her art, her becoming. It's not detachment. It's trust. Trust in herself, trust in timing, trust that absence doesn't always mean loss. It sometimes means space for something richer to grow. And Jung would have called this individuation in its most living form, not as a theory, but as a woman who chooses evolution over control, who doesn't perform strength, but lives it, breath by breath, who lets her emotions move through her, not own her, who feels everything fully and still doesn't flinch. Because when a woman becomes her own anchor, she doesn't cling to passing ships. She watches them from the shore, blesses them on their way, and returns to her own fire. And that kind of fire, it doesn't need to chase. It draws people in. It changes them. It teaches a man, often without him realizing it, how to hold space, how to soften, how to listen. And sometimes even how to grieve, because when he walks away from her, what he's really walking away from is the part of himself she helped him see. And that's not easy to forget. There's something deeply human about returning, about the pull toward what felt real, even if it was fleeting, about trying to retrace the steps back to a moment that made you feel alive. And men do return, quietly, curiously, not always to rekindle, but to re-understand, to feel, if only for a second, what it felt like to be fully seen. Not worshipped, not entertained, but seen. That's the real alchemy. When a woman doesn't reflect a fantasy back at him, but instead offers a mirror to his unlived parts, his wounds, his wonder, his longing to be more than what he performs in the world. She becomes a symbol, not of possession, but of possibility. Not because she intended to, but because she lived truthfully. And truth is rare. So many relationships are built on roles, scripts, unspoken trades of validation and performance. But the women who haunt a man's memory, haunt in the most tender way, are the ones who broke the script, who didn't need to impress, who dared to be real even when it was inconvenient, who didn't rush to fix the silence, who didn't try to make the moment more than it was, who let him leave without trying to make him stay. Not because she was indifferent, but because she honored his choice and her own life more than any outcome. There's a strength in that softness that no bravado can touch. And when she folded back into her world, not to punish, but to heal, to create, to expand, she becomes the thing he didn't know he was seeking all along. Not a woman to complete his life, but a woman who reminded him he had one. It's a strange kind of grief, being in the presence of someone who feels like home, but who refuses to live for you. Someone whose love doesn't ask you to shrink or please, but to rise. Not to perform, but to meet them in your own wholeness. And that's the thing. Real connection doesn't let you stay asleep. It wakes you up. It unsettles you. It shows you the parts of yourself you've neglected or denied. And if you're not ready to see those parts, you might walk away. But you'll remember. Because love like that isn't just love. It's a catalyst. And most people don't forget the first time they met themselves in someone else's eyes. Maybe that's what makes her unforgettable. She didn't ask him to become someone else. She just became so deeply herself that being near her made him wonder if he could do the same. And if he couldn't then, he might return when he's ready. Not to rekindle her, but to thank her, to feel it again. Or maybe to try one more time to understand what he didn't back then. Because the women who leave a mark aren't always the ones who stay. They're the ones who let go without closing their hearts. They're the ones who don't tie love to outcome, who believe in connection more than control. And that kind of woman, she becomes a compass, a quiet north, a symbol of the kind of intimacy that doesn't entrap, but transform. So if you've ever wondered why someone came back, not with flowers or apologies, but with softer eyes and slower words, it's probably because your presence didn't just touch his body, it touched his psyche, his unconscious, his soul. And that kind of presence, it doesn't fade, not with time, not with distance, because what's unforgettable isn't who you were to him, it's who you helped him become when he was with you. And that may be what love was always meant to be. Not ownership, but reflection. Not certainty, but awakening. So wherever you are now, in whatever stage of loving or leaving or remembering, know this. You don't have to chase to be chosen. You don't have to perform to be loved. And you don't have to prove your worth through someone else's return. You are not unforgettable because of what someone feels about you. You are unforgettable because of who you dared to be in front of them. That is enough. You are enough. And in a world that tells you otherwise every single day, that quiet truth might be the most radical thing you could ever believe.